The rhetoric surrounding the conflict in Ukraine has intensified dramatically following a direct warning from Moscow to NATO regarding any attempts to intercept Russian weaponry over Ukrainian skies. This development marks a critical juncture in the ongoing geopolitical standoff, raising significant concerns about the direct confrontation between Russia and the Western military alliance. The clear and unambiguous message from Russian officials underscores the perilous nature of the current environment, where a miscalculation or perceived act of aggression could trigger an immediate and devastating response. The international community is closely monitoring these statements, understanding that the implications of such a scenario would extend far beyond the immediate region. Dmitry Medvedev, a prominent Russian security official, delivered a particularly stark warning, unequivocally stating that any NATO involvement in shooting down Russian unmanned aerial vehicle UAVs or missiles over Ukraine would be considered an act of war. His declaration left no room for ambiguity, emphasizing that Russia's response would be instantaneous and without preliminary consultations or diplomatic maneuvers. Medvedev's statements directly address the possibility of NATO countries establishing a no-fly zone or otherwise engaging in the interceptions of Russian assets, explicitly labeling such action as provocative and a direct path to conflict. He articulated that in such an event, there would be no calls for meeting, no involvement of the United Nations Secretary General, and no lengthy deliberations over international articles or treaties. Instead, Russia would react immediately, treating the incident as a full-scale war between NATO and Russia. This assertive stance from Moscow aims to draw a clear red line for the alliance, delineating actions that Russia views as unacceptable and directly threatening to its security interests. The gravity of Medvedev's words resonate deeply within international diplomatic circles, as it removes any pretense of proxy warfare and squarely places the onus of potential direct conflict on any future NATO action in Ukrainian airspace. His choice of phrasing, "let's call a spade," further highlight Russia's no-nonsense approach and its intent to communicate the seriousness of its position without diplomatic niceties. This is not merely a threat but a declared policy designed to deter NATO from any aerial intervention in the conflict. The implications for regional stability are immense, as any accidental or intentional engagement between NATO and Russian forces in the air could quickly spiral out of control, leading to an unprecedented escalations of hostilities in Europe. In response to Russia's warning, Andriy Yermak, the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, countered with a direct retort, asserting that if Russia wished to prevent its drone from being shot down over Ukraine, then it should cease launching them in the first place. Yermak's statement reflects Ukraine's position that Russian aerial incursions are acts of aggression, and that Ukraine, along with any allies supporting its defense, has every right to protect its airspace and territory. This highlights the fundamental disagreement at the heart of the conflict. Russia views its action as legitimate security operations, while Ukraine and its Western partners view them as a violation of sovereignty and international law. Yermak's comment underscored the principle of self-defense, indicating that as long as Russia continues to use drones and missiles against Ukraine, Ukraine would take measures to neutralize these threats, regardless of Russia's warning to NATO. The exchange between Medvedev and Yermak encapsulates the escalating tension and the seemingly intractable position of the parties involved. Russia's warning to NATO is not an isolated incident, but rather fits into a broader pattern of escalating rhetoric and military posturing that has characterized the conflict. It serves as a stark reminder of the potential for miscalculation, where advanced military technologies and deeply entrenched geopolitical interests collide. The international community, particularly the member states of NATO and the European Union, are now faced with the challenging task of navigating this dangerous environment balancing their support for Ukraine with the imperative of avoiding a direct and catastrophic military engagement with Russia. The specter of a direct NATO-Russia conflict has long been a central concern for policymakers and military strategists. The current exchange brings this theoretical possibility much closer to reality. NATO's historical role as a defensive alliance is now being tested by the aggressive posture of Russia and its explicit warning. The decision-making processes within NATO will be under intense scrutiny as leaders weigh the risk and benefits of various responses to Russia's declaration. Any move to enhance air defense capabilities in Ukraine or to directly interdict Russian aerial assets would be viewed through the lens of Medvedev's warning, potentially triggering the immediate response he outlined. The delicate balance between deterrence and de-escalation has become even more precarious. Furthermore, the language used by both sides reveals a hardening of positions and a decreasing willingness to compromise. Medvedev's dismissal of international meeting and article underscores a Russian stance that, in the event of a perceived direct attack, it would prioritize immediate military action over diplomatic channels. This signals a dangerous shift away from established mechanisms for conflict resolution and risk mitigation. For Ukraine, Yermak's response reinforced the narrative of defending sovereign territory against an aggressor, framing any defensive action as a necessary consequence of Russian aggression. The absence of a clear path to de-escalation through diplomatic means make the current situations profoundly concerning for global security. The operational context of this warning involved the ongoing use of Russian drones and missiles against targets in Ukraine. These aerial assets are a critical component of Russia's military strategy, used for reconnaissance, targeting, and direct strikes. Any action by NATO to shoot down these assets would be a direct challenge to Russia's operational capabilities and a clear intervention in the conflict. The geographical scope of such interceptions, whether over Ukrainian territory or in border regions, would also be a critical factor in determining the precise nature of Russia's response. The technical capabilities of NATO air defense systems and aircraft are substantial, and their deployment in an interdiction role would significantly alter the dynamics of the conflicts. The political implications of Russia's warning are equally significant. It places immense pressure on NATO member states to clarify their positions and potential actions regarding the defense of Ukrainian airspace. While many NATO members have provided extensive military aid to Ukraine, direct military intervention in the air has largely been avoided to prevent a direct clash with Russia. Medvedev's statement forced a re-evaluation of these red lines and the potential consequences of crossing them. The unity of NATO, often touted as a cornerstone of Western security, will be tested as member states grapple with a serious implication of a direct military confrontation with Russia, a nuclear-armed power. This situation also highlights the broader strategic objectives of both Russia and NATO. For Russia, the warning is an attempt to assert its sphere of influence and deter what it perceives as Western encroachment. For NATO, the challenge is to uphold the principles of international law and support a sovereign nation under attack, without triggering a wider European conflict. The delicate dance between these competing objectives require careful diplomatic maneuvering and a clear understanding of the risk involved. The world is watching as these two major geopolitical blocs navigate a period of unprecedented tension, where the slightest misstep could have catastrophic global repercussions. The immediate future of regional and global security hinges on how these warnings are interpreted and acted upon by all parties involved. That's all for me for today. If you like the video presentation and you would like to follow for more, hit that subscribe and like button now, and we will continue to build this show for you. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Thank you so much. I will see you soon. Bye for now.